Dobro. History. Archive.
All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into one of K-pop's most enduring and tragic mysteries, the death of a superstar, Kim Sung-jae, right at the moment his solo career was about to explode. So let's set the scene. It's the morning of November 20th, 1995. K-pop icon Kim Sung-jae is found dead in his hotel room. And right away, there's this one chilling, undeniable clue. 28. 28 needle marks found on his right arm. And those 28 marks, they immediately created a huge problem. See, the police, they first thought, okay, maybe death by overwork, a heart attack from pure exhaustion, it happens. But the forensics? Oh, they were about to tell a completely different and way more sinister story. Homicide by poisoning. So to really get what happened here, we have to understand the man himself. Because Kim Sung-jae, he wasn't just another singer. No way. This guy was a cultural phenomenon, an artist who was literally changing the face of Korean pop culture. I mean, he was one half of the legendary duo The Hae. He was the guy who introduced New Jack Swing and hip-hop fashion to a Korean audience that was just hungry for it. He was a style icon, a total trendsetter. And the crazy part? The very night he died was supposed to be his huge, triumphant debut as a solo artist. The timing is just unbelievable. Now get this. This is a quote from his last phone call home, just hours before he died. He's so happy, so proud, and just excited about eating a simple meal his mom made. Think about that. That does not sound like a man who's in despair, right? It's the complete opposite of someone who might be suicidal. All right, let's move on to the science, because this is where things get really interesting. The first cops on the scene might have missed it, but Kim's own body, it was telling a story that was absolutely impossible to ignore. So, remember those 28 needle marks? Their location was the first giant red flag. You see, Kim Sung-jae was right-handed. Just try to imagine it. It is practically impossible for someone to inject their own right arm 28 times with any kind of precision. Just no way. That simple fact alone screamed that someone else had to have been in that room. And then the toxicology report came back, and it revealed this bizarre two-part chemical cocktail. So ingredient number 1 was a really powerful animal tranquilizer called Zolotil. What does it do to a person? Well, it causes paralysis and amnesia. It would have made him completely helpless. This was the setup. Then came the second ingredient, magnesium sulfate. Now, this stuff has medical uses for sure, but in the kind of high dose they found in his system, it's lethal. It just stops your heart and lungs. This was the knockout punch. So when you put it all together, what you have is a very calculated two-step execution. First, you use the Zolotil to paralyze the victim, so they can't fight back. Then, once they're helpless, you administer the magnesium sulfate to cause a fatal heart attack. And what's the result? A quiet death, one that looks almost identical to the police's first guess, a simple heart attack from overwork. It's kind of brilliant, in a terrifying way. Now, later on, the defense tried to argue this was all just a tragic accidental overdose. But the forensics completely shut that down. I mean, come on. Kim had 0 track marks like a long-term drug user. His hair follicles came back clean for all common narcotics. And let's be real, these are not recreational drugs we're talking about. Okay, so the evidence is screaming murder. The question is, who? The investigation quickly zeroed in on the one person who had the motive, the means, and the opportunity. His girlfriend, who we only know as Miss Kim. And of course, she was the very last person to see him alive. And on paper, Miss Kim looked like a perfect suspect. She was a student at a top medical school, which means she had access to and knowledge of drugs and injections. Plus, according to people who knew them, their relationship had become really, really toxic and incredibly controlling. Yeah, witness testimonies started painting this really disturbing picture of obsession. We're talking about some pretty extreme stuff, like an incident where she allegedly shot him in the face with a gas gun, and another where she reportedly tied him to a bed with duct tape just to stop him from going to an appointment. This wasn't a one-off thing, it was a clear, escalating pattern of wanting total control. And then, investigators found what they thought was the smoking gun. A pharmacist came forward and confirmed that Miss Kim herself had bought both Zolotil and magnesium sulfate, the exact two drugs, right before the murder. And her excuse? She told the pharmacist her dog needed to be put down and, weirdly, asked him to keep the whole purchase a secret. The police checked it out, and guess what? Her dog was perfectly fine. So, armed with this mountain of circumstantial evidence, the prosecutors took Miss Kim to trial. This thing absolutely captivated the entire nation. It basically became Korea's first big modern trial of the century. And, at first, it really looked like justice was going to be served. The first court found the evidence just overwhelming. They convicted Ms. Kim of murder and handed her a life sentence. But then came the appeal. And this is where the whole case just fell apart. Their star witness, the pharmacist, he suddenly gets on the stand and can't remember who he sold the drugs to. He went from being totally certain it was Miss Kim to just, I can't remember clearly. And poof, just like that, the prosecution's smoking gun was gone. Meanwhile, her high-powered defense team, they went on the offensive. They started poking holes in everything. They argued the amount of poison she bought wasn't enough to kill him. They created this really weird alibi that had to do with the timing of a hotel washing machine cycle. They even started throwing out wild theories about jealous fans or maybe backup dancers. Look, they didn't have to prove she was innocent. All they had to do was create reasonable doubt. And you know what? It worked. Her conviction was overturned. And that verdict was then upheld by the Supreme Court. And because of South Korea's double jeopardy laws, Ms. Kim can never, ever be retried for this crime. As far as the law is concerned, this case is closed. Forever. So decades go by, and this case is still this huge open wound in Korean culture. But the story doesn't end there. In a very modern twist, recent attempts to uncover the truth have been, actively shut down. Okay, so flash forward to 2019. A really popular investigative journalism show, kind of like a Korean 60 Minutes, announces they're doing a special episode on the case. And they claimed that using modern forensics, they'd found new evidence that could finally give people some answers. But then, just hours before it was supposed to air, Ms. Kim, who's now living under a new identity, files an injunction to stop the broadcast. And a court actually agreed with her. They ruled that her personal privacy was more important than the public's right to know. So the show was banned. The network even tried to re-edit it and air it again, and it got banned a second time. And that just leaves us with this one final haunting question. The original case is legally closed. Any modern investigation is legally silenced. So in a story that started with 28 needle marks and a meticulously planned two-step execution, will the truth itself ever get an encore?